Hey guys, in this video we will be going over steps 1 through 3. You guys will need these steps for all size knotless box braids that you will be doing. So first you want to make sure you start off with a super fresh blow dry. Try to get all the kinks and curls out. I ask my clients to come blow dry straight from roots to tips. So the very first step is to create a middle part. To create a middle part, you can go up and create a part from ear to ear. This is going to help you see the center of the head and make sure that part is centered. So you see me doing that on the left side as well as the right side. So I go in on the other side and I'm trying to meet the same point from the right side. Don't think too hard about this. This part is not permanent at all. You're just using this step just to help see the front of the hair to get the middle part straight. So I clip the back up. I'm going for a middle part as centered as possible at the top. After starting my middle part from the front of the head, I'm going to go back to the back side and then I'm going to meet that middle part from the back to make sure that the part is centered. Your middle part is super important. It's going to be permanent. You're going to keep it there throughout the whole style. So you want to spend as much time as possible to make sure your middle part is centered. This is going to be the key to making sure your parts are symmetric and they're straight and not slanted. Heading to the back side, I'm going up from the center of her nape, and then I'm just going to meet the middle part at the center of her head. After you get a nice center part, you are going to apply your product. I'm applying my O-gel. You guys know I use that for all of the parts and anything at the base of the braids. And then I'm going to clean it up with my extra sharp precision comb. Alright, so that is the first part. That is your middle part. We are combing this part out because it is temporary. It was just to get a centered middle part. Moving on to the next step, this is the equator part. This is a horizontal part that's going to split the crown of the head from the nape section of the head. So the nape section is the back section, and then the top of the head or the crown of the head is going to be where we have our U-shaped parts that's going to go all the way around the head. So this part is really important. You want to be sure to place this part directly where it's going to allow for those top U-shaped parts to go all the way around the head. So if I was to go up a little bit further from this point, I would then have hair from the top section down at the nape section. So you want to make sure no hair from the front of the head that is on top of the ear is connected at the back of the nape. To start off this part, I do make sure my comb is parallel to the ground. So if you have your client looking straight forward, you want to make sure this part is parallel to the ground. In other words, you want it to be straight horizontal with the ground. So if I was to make a row right here, I can tell that that whole row is going to go right around the client's head. If by chance this part was a little further down, you see that if I was to have a row around the top, it would swoop down. So you want to avoid that swoop down, and you want to make sure the rows are smooth sailing straight across the back of the head. So you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side until you go around the back and make sure that both sides are even and straighten out your parts. And depending on which hand is your dominant hand, one side is going to be harder than the other. That's totally fine. Just make sure you go to the back and even it up and make sure both sides are even. Make sure one side isn't taller than the other one. And then you clean up your parts with O-gel and your precision comb. Alright, so we got our middle part, that's a permanent part. We have our equator part. Our horizontal part is a permanent part as well. Next, we are going to do a semi-permanent part. This part is permanent for now. It's going to help us with creating our rows and make sure we have even rows. But throughout the style, we will get rid of this part. You're going to go up from ear to ear. And it's not really a specific place where this part needs to be. You just want to make sure you're leaving out enough room at the front of the head so you can be able to even out your rows. You don't want to be working with a couple inches at the front of the head when trying to decide the size of your rows and splitting up your rows. And then you want to go ahead and clean up with your O-gel and your precision comb. Again, this is steps 1 through 3. You're going to need these 3 steps for all size knotless box braids. Your middle part is permanent. That was the first part that we did. The horizontal part that separates the nape from the crown of the head is also a permanent part. The last part, which I like to call the vertical part, separates the top of the head hamburger style, and that one is semi-permanent. As we continue to part throughout the head and create our boxes, you guys will see where that part is going to basically go away. Hey y'all, in this video I'm showing you guys how to part your rows. In this video I'm going to show you guys how to part the large rows. So you guys already know, according to the rubric for numbering rows, large braids have 2 rows at the nape. So my nape section here is my 2 squares I have left at the bottom, and I'm going to split this into 2 even pieces to get 2 rows. Again, I'm going to show you guys how to do the rows only in this video. Be sure to check out the triangle part videos to see how I get the triangle parts done from beginning to end. So the rows that I'll be showing you in this video will be the same just as if you were doing box parts or triangle parts. So after you get your 2 rows at the nape section, you're going to head to the top of your head. This is where we're going to begin to section off our rows for the crown of the head, or in other words, our U-shaped rows. So according to the rubric, for large braids, we're going to have 4 U-shaped rows across the head. So that's 4 rows on each side of the middle part, and these rows are going to connect on the other side. Being that I know it's an even number amount of rows, I just go ahead and split the whole section in half, and then split those 2 half sections into halves again to make sure I get 4 even pieces. So I do this as a start, and then I just go back to make sure each of the 4 pieces are even. Another reason why it's really good to pre-part is because typically the forehead area is smaller than the rest of the head. You want to be sure to pre-part to make sure that you're fitting all your rows in. You don't want to not pre-part and then start to do, say, 2 or 3 rows and then run out of room for your last row at the middle part. So it's really important to pre-part if you can. Now we have the number of rows that we have. According to the rubric, that is 4 rows on each side of the middle part, and that is going to be 4 U-shaped rows all around the head because these rows are going to connect. So after you get the first side done, move over to the next side and do the same thing. And I like to start with the middle part. The middle part is what everybody's going to see. So I like to start here to make sure that first one matches the next side, and then I go from there and continue separating out my rows, making sure they're all the same size. That was the hard part, and now you see here as you move along the rows, you're just going to trace the parts that you created from the rows in the front and then connect it all the way around the head as you go up the head. And this would be the same thing you would do if you were to just pre-part all of the rows before starting to braid. In this video here, I did not do a pre-part for the whole head. I just did it as I went. So if you don't do the pre-part for the whole head, that's totally fine. But I do recommend you at least separate your rows out in the front. both sides. Make sure it's the same thickness all the way around before you clean up your parts and move to the next row. Like I mentioned in steps 1 through 3, this vertical part that we use to separate the rows at the beginning of the head is not a permanent part. As you can see, I'm combing it out. That part was there just to help me part my rows, and once I'm done with it, I just combine the hair and then I begin to do my boxes or my triangles throughout that row. So the main thing you want to know is that you follow that thickness around the back of the head. Not from the very front, because like I said, the forehead is normally smaller, but the thickness that you have from the back of that point. So a lot of people had issues with the very top of the head. It's literally the same thing all the way up. Just make sure that second to last row is the same thickness all the way around, and then your middle part, which is your last U-shaped row, is just left there, and then you can go to create your boxes or your triangles. So that is parting the rows. And then lastly, what I do is I always clean up my middle part before I begin to make my braids, whether I'm doing boxes or triangles. So again, that is me showing how to part rows for large braids. And again, that is 4 rows on each side of the middle part, or you can look at it as 4 U-shaped rows across the crown of the head.